He wasn't sure how the men would take what he had to say, but he wanted to be upfront and honest with them, and then let the chips fall where they may. Another hour passed before the intensity of the game lessened as King Jamal Yasir of Tehran, who was married to Delaney Westmoreland, told everyone about the new school that had been built in his country. When he'd finished talking, Jaxon decided to make his announcement in a voice loud enough to be heard by everyone.
"Just so all of you know, I plan to marry Nadia."
Like he figured it would, the room became quiet. More than 50 pairs of eyes stared at him. At first, no one said anything, and then his cousin, Senator Jess Outlaw, the only one who'd been privy to Jackson's plan, made sure everyone's mind was free of confusion by asking, "Nadia Novak?" Jaxon fought back a grin. That was the only Nadia he knew, and would guess that was the only one the others knew as well.
"Yes, Nadia Novak."
"I didn't know you and Nadia were seeing each other," Zane Westmoreland said after taking a sip of his brandy.
"We aren't. Then how are you going to marry her? What's your plan of action?"
Derringer Westmoreland asked. A slow smile broke across Jackson's lips.
"A very serious courtship."
"Good luck with that," his cousin Maverick Outlaw said. "I think all of us have heard Nadia say more than once that she plans to stay single for a long time, possibly forever." "Hey, that's what Gemma claimed," Callum Austell said in his strong Australian accent. "It took me 3 years, but I eventually won her heart." Jaxon had heard the story of how Ramsay Westmoreland's best friend from Australia had come to Denver to help Ramsay start his sheep farm. One day he had seen Ramsay's sister Gemma, and what had been intended as a 1-year trip to America for Callum had become 3. It had taken the man that long to win Gemma over.
"I don't have 3 years," Jaxon said. "I want to marry Nadia before New Year's."
He knew that was a big initiative, given this was August. "I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but Nadia doesn't like overconfident men," Canyon Westmoreland said, grinning. Jaxon noticed several others nodding their heads in agreement.
"I don't consider myself an overconfident man, just a self-assured one."
"You're also a very disciplined one. But with Nadia, it won't matter," Stern Westmoreland piped in to say. "I suggest you think things through, Jaxon. Trying to win Nadia over might be taking on a little too much. I love her to death, but she's a renegade. She's headstrong, opinionated, and sassy."
"Sounds like she hung around Bailey too long,"
Walker Rafferty grinned, commenting on his wife.
"At least I've never heard Nadia use any curse words."
Jaxon raised a brow.
"Bailey curses?"
He couldn't imagine such a thing of the woman he'd gotten to know. Laughter broke out around the room. Hilarious laughter.
"Worse than a sailor,"
Ramsay Westmoreland said, taking a sip of his drink. Jaxon figured Ramsay should know, since he was Bailey's oldest brother.
"Bailey would use curse words not even in the English language," Ramsay kept on. "You wouldn't believe how many times Dylan and I had to wash our mouth out with soap. Now we let Walker deal with it."
Jaxon had heard how the parents, the aunts and uncles of the Denver Westmorelands, had died in a plane crash over 20 years ago, leaving Dylan, the oldest cousin, and Ramsay, who was next to the oldest, with a family of 15. Several of the siblings and cousins had been under 16 at the time. When the state of Colorado tried forcing Dylan to put the youngest in foster homes, he had refused. Walker chuckled.
"Now that we have kids of our own, Bailey's gotten a whole lot better and rarely says a curse word, thank God."
"So in other words," Sloan Outlaw said, "Nadia will be a challenge you might not want to take on, cuz we've seen her give more than one guy the boot. We'd hate for you to be the next." Jaxon didn't say anything for a minute as he glanced around the room and met each man's gaze.
"I am very much aware that Nadia has a strong personality. However, I don't have any choice about taking Nadia on. I've fallen in love with her."
Words like damn, crap, and shit escaped several of the men's lips. "Have you taken the time to get to know her?" Riley Westmoreland asked.
"No, but it doesn't matter.
I fell in love with her the moment we were introduced."
"But then that's how things work in the Ravnell family."
"They work that way in the Austell family, too, so I know where you're coming from," Callum said, grinning.